making a hard left turn. We see it descending in the videos. We can tell that we are looking at cumulus clouds. These cumulus clouds only form at low altitudes. We check the weather pattern for that day, and within 15 minutes of when we think these videos happen, the weather actually had low altitude cumulus clouds in the Nicobar Islands as well. The plane is actually maxing out the capabilities of a 777-200 wall and descent, wall turning at roughly 150 to 250 miles per hour. This would be very difficult to fake. In fact, there was somebody who posted on social media claiming to be a VFX artist from the movie Top Gun Maverick that said that scaling down planes like this and getting it to be accurate to the capabilities of the plane is some of the hardest things to pull off. Now, what we see, both videos actually are in perfect synchronization. We have a satellite video looking from one angle, and then we have a drone video looking horizontally from a completely different angle, from the opposite side. And in the drone video, we can see these orbs begin to circle around the plane. In the satellite video, we see these orbs coming in at roughly 2,000 miles per hour, Mach 2, Mach 3 speeds we've estimated based on comparing pixels in them. And in both videos, these orbs are defying gravity as we know it. They're floating freely. They're not falling to the ground. But in the drone video, we see some very unusual details. We can see in the drone video that there's a black line. It looks like it's behind the orbs, but it's actually in front of the orbs, pulling them forward like they're running on train tracks. So there seems to be two different anti-gravitational effects at play here. The orbs themselves are displaced from gravity. We can see what's called a non-radiating barrier, which means it's like a field around the orb. It actually looks like these are more of like ball lightning as opposed to something like a traditional flying saucer that we might expect in UFOlogy. They form a pattern around the plane that when we mapped it out, it actually is a spherical pattern mapping in the plane, rotating around in a perfect 120-degree sinusoidal pattern, which seems to have some sort of purpose, which after we see the zap becomes a lot more apparent. It's like it's mapping the plane to figure out the dimensions of it. The orbs have a heat signature in them. And you can see there's a very clear heat signature in the orbs, which is a very unusual detail to add. Engineer who works in low-energy nuclear reactions, Bob Grenier, has looked at this and said that this is consistent with the topological monopole. Topological monopole is the idea of having a single magnetic effect, either a north or south, but not having a dipole effect. And this is potentially what might be needed in order to achieve anti-gravity, along with stuff like room temperature superconductivity. In the drone video, some of the strongest evidence for why this video is real is that we see it manually tracking the plane. So they're not using automatic tracking. There's a little bit of a delay consistent with somebody very far away using that camera to follow the plane and try to track it. They zoom in. There's shake in the drone video, which is, as they zoom in, increases accurately, just like if you're using your camera to zoom in on something. There's a 3D dynamic parallax. So when they zoom in, you can actually see the clouds, you can see the edges of the clouds more. So you can actually see that this is a full 3D rendered environment if it was faked. It can't be just a picture. We also see that line in front of the orbs is what we refer to as a geodesic. You can imagine it like the orbs are creating space in front of them to run down, like, as I mentioned, those train tracks, almost like a gravity well in front of them. We believe, after talking to Salvatore Pius, who has some patents out there that are advanced technology patents, that this could be produced by a laser effect using a high frequency, some type of high frequency vibrational effect that can essentially break through the fabric of reality as we see it, to create this geodesic, kind of bending or opening up space in front of them. And then right before the zap, we see one of the strongest details is we see the orbs reorient. And they actually, in both videos, we see a synchronized event. In the drone video, we see the orbs reorient where the heat signature kind of disappears for a second and then comes back. And then the orbs seem to be in a very specific position. At the same time, in the satellite video, we see the orbs spinning rotation slow down a little bit. And then all of a sudden, the orbs converge on the plane. And Bob Grenier has argued when they're converging on the plane, they're amplifying their energy. And talking to Salvatore Pius, he said that we can amplify energy to such a degree that we can break through the Schwinger limit, which is what we need to be able to do to break through the permittivity of free space itself, to break through what we would see as our reality to the underlying framework of the universe itself. And then we see this cold, dark event open up and encapsulate the plane. And within 3 frames, a fraction of a second, the plane goes from being there to not being there anymore. You can actually see the tail of the plane in one frame, the very first frame of the dark endothermic event opening up. You can still see it sticking out of the back. And it looks like the plane's been pulled backwards a little bit. Now, I talked to Dave Rossi, who is a DoD contractor and engineer himself, and he argued the idea that there might be a fourth orb because you have to have some direction, some steering wheel for this mechanism, and that there might be an entanglement effect where three orbs have been entangled to a fourth orb. And you can stretch them out any two different locations. And then when we see our event go off, now all of a sudden the plane goes from being over here with the three orbs to being over here where the fourth orb is, as some sort of steering wheel or direction of travel. And it might be getting pulled backwards. And this is speculative, of course, but if it were being pulled backwards, since the plane was going to the east, it would be getting pulled backwards somewhere over to the west, which is where the Maldives are. So this is, I think, the best, in my mind. And one additional detail that I forgot to mention is there's a heat signature in the belly of the plane as well that morphs accurately, at least what I would expect from heat potentially pouring out of the plane. And it's in the location where the AC exhaust ports are near the landing gear. And since we've speculated as a fire event, especially if the fire was in the forward cargo bays, the smoke would have been pouring through the air conditioning system in the airplane. And it would have been getting pumped out through those AC exhaust ports. And in this situation as well, we've got the fire event that we speculated. We've got that Mayday call. We've got the video showing hot smoke coming out of the back of this plane as well. And then we've got our witness on the ground, Catherine T., who saw dark smoke. So to me, I think that this is a huge amount of evidence that if these videos aren't real, why do they tell a story of the plane that's matched by more evidence than anybody else's story to date, any expert or what have you? The only thing that we've had to rule out for these videos to be real and this event to be the true event of the plane is these satellite pings after the location in the Nicobar Islands. And if you look at those Inmarsat satellite pings, I've looked at the raw data myself, it amounts to 10 rows on an Excel spreadsheet. And the weirdest part is that if you look at everything up until the Nicobar Islands, from when the plane took off, it's hundreds of rows of data. And you get to that part, and it's just 10 rows of data for 5 hours.
What does that mean? So the